This happened to my cousin when she came and slept over at our house. We were living in Brooklyn Park at the time. When she came over, she would stay up late for a while and then have some talks here and there. We would also go down to our basement to play and dance for fun. But whenever we would go upstairs, we would all race like there was no tomorrow. Then night came and we all went to sleep. My parents were out partying that night. My little brother was also one at the time. He slept with us in our room. That night, it was only me, my sister, my cousin, and my one and only little brother that slept in our room. I slept at the wall as I always do, and my cousin slept right next to me. My baby brother slept next to her, and my sister Star slept next to him, and my oldest sister slept at the very edge. All of us knocked out cold, when in the middle of the night, my cousin woke up and saw a figure like human coming closer and closer, and it was trying to grab my little sister Star. As the thing got closer, it noticed my cousin moving, and it stopped and stared at her. It decided to change direction and went straight towards my cousin, trying to grab her. My cousin was brave and asked the thing what did it want. The figure replied and asked, "Why do you guys always run up the stairs so fast and loud when you come down the basement?" My cousin replied that it wasn't us and that we didn't run. It then said that it was one of us and tried to grab my sister. My cousin told the thing that we didn't do anything and for it to go away. My cousin bravely kicked the entity. The thing flew back and it got scared and left. The last thing it said was for us to stop running up the stairs when we come down to the basement. The next day, my cousin told us about what happened, and we knew exactly who was the one that would always run up the stairs so fast and loud. It was my sister Star. We told her to stop because the thing almost took her away. We eventually told my parents, but things are fine now. However, one night, I did have a nightmare about that basement and how someone died in there and how it crawls around living in our basement. This happened in Brooklyn Park in February of 2013. I'm wondering if what I saw that day was a ghost, or perhaps if it was something else. On that Saturday evening at around 6:45 p.m., my parents left to go to a Valentine's banquet party, so my little brother and I were home alone watching Netflix. The two of us got done watching China Heavyweight. It was close to 8 o'clock by then. At that time, the two of us were quite hungry. About 3 blocks away from us is a Mexican convenience store. They have a grill place where they make hamburgers, Philly steak sandwiches, and other food, so the two of us decided to walk there to order our food and bring it back home to eat. After ordering our food, we walked out of the store to go back home, and as we were on our way, we had to go past a crossing intersection street and a park before we reached our house. The house was about another 2 blocks away, so while we were talking about hunting this coming fall, we then got close to the intersection. We stopped and waited to see if there are any cars coming in our direction. Looking left and right, we saw that the coast was clear. We decided to go straight to our house and took a left turn. When we came upon the corner of the street, to our left, we saw a figure standing at the corner of a stop sign underneath a big pine tree. The two of us saw the figure standing there, and the distance between us and the figure was approximately 30 yards. While it was standing there, we noticed how the figure looked. It had long, thin strands of hair hanging from its big forehead, and it had square-looking like shoulders with long arms dangling back and forth, swaying. At this point, the two of us were staring at the thing, and my brother whispered to me, asking if I also see it. I told him that I saw it as well, and to not think of anything and just not talk on our way back home. He agreed, and I took one last look at the figure. it was looking straight at the direction to the park where the playground is at. When we got into our driveway, we ran as fast as we could to open the door. We barged into the house and went into my room to eat our food, trying not to think of what we saw. Interested in sharing your stories? Submit them to HmongChronicles@gmail.com or in the description below. Here is the next story. Thank you. When I was about 3 or 4 years old, I experienced some things when I still lived in Minnesota. As I grew older, I realized that what I saw and heard wasn't something like a human. Obviously, at that age, I wasn't taught what the word ghost exactly meant. My family and I lived at a home in Brooklyn Park. I don't remember when it all started, but it occurred for many nights. In the middle of the night, I would wake up and go to sleep with my parents. When I got to the other end of their bed, I would stop and take a look back at the door. I don't know why I did that, but once in a while, I will always see a 6-foot shadow coming towards me. It never stops and never enters my parents' room. The next thing I know, I would wake up sleeping by my parents' feet, shaking like crazy. It wasn't the feeling like I was cold, but like I was scared. If some nights I didn't see the shadow, instead, I would hear voices. I can't really explain it because I don't remember what it said. All I remember was that those voices were in Hmong. This would only occur at midnight because I remember waking up when the sun was about to rise and nothing happened. Good thing the sun was about to rise because that morning my mom took my dad to work. I wonder what would have happened if it was midnight and my parents weren't in their bed. My parents also used to wonder why I would end up at the foot of their bed shaking. It was only until now that I told them about what happened. I also had plenty of experiences at my grandma's house. Sometimes when I go over to my grandma's house, I'd open the door to her basement and stand at the very top of her stairs. There, I would see a person with long black hair. I'm not sure if it was a man or a woman, but the thing was in a bucket against the wall. I'm very certain that the thing wasn't a mannequin or a doll. I can still imagine how it looks like, but I don't quite remember what the face looked like. I saw the thing a couple of times, but sometimes it wasn't there. This would only be when my grandma would have parties or there would be a few people in the house. That's when the thing wouldn't show up. However, when there are less people, I always saw the figure downstairs. Every time I went down to play in the basement with my siblings, I always wondered where the thing went. Thinking about it now scares the crap out of me. Another incident was when my brother and my grandma got into a huge fight. I was crying with my grandma because we were scared. My brother had grabbed a knife and ran into the basement crying. My grandma and I were at the top of the stairs. Suddenly, my brother comes back charging up the stairs, holding a knife like he was going to stab my grandma. But right there and then, when he got halfway up the stairs, we all heard a knock, 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 like someone knocking on a door or wall very fast. It was extremely loud. It was right there and then that we all froze and stood in silence for 5 seconds. After that, we acted like nothing happened. My grandma said that it was my grandpa who knocked because he didn't want my brother to kill her. I'm still curious if it was my grandpa or the person in the bucket. After those incidents, my family and I moved out of Minnesota. I never experienced anything like that for the past 14 years, except for when I scare myself. North Minneapolis is very spooky. I used to live there with some friends and we had our share of ghostly experiences in this little house. Some of them would get sat on. Some of them would see shadows, usually huge Indian-looking shadows. The dog is kept in the basement and sometimes he would bark and cry loudly as if he was getting beat up. One time, I heard someone brushing their teeth in the bathroom as I got off of work. I got home before the other guys did. The bathroom door was open and the light was turned off. Strangely though, I could hear someone brushing their teeth. One of my friends was playing video games in the living room. He also heard it as well. The two of us knew that nobody else was in the house. I went to stand by the bathroom and listened. Sure enough, it was coming from in there. Then I took a quick peek and the sound of someone brushing their teeth suddenly stopped. Another incident there, my friend was sleeping on the couch. He woke up and heard someone flipping through pages of books like they were reading right above his head. He looked at the clock on the wall and it was almost 5 a.m., but at this point, he couldn't move. He was paralyzed. He kept on hearing the pages being flipped through. My friend tried really hard to move, and when he finally did, the flipping of the pages stopped and there was no one there. This same friend always got sat on when he slept in the basement. He said that the harder he tried to fight it, the more often it comes. He works second shift, so he comes home pretty late. One night he decided just not to fight it anymore. He was tired from work and said, "Do what you want to do and get it over with." After that, he doesn't get sat on anymore. My friends were already living in the house before I went there. They told me that when they first moved in the basement, there were these little teepees that were all hung over the basement. My friends tossed them all away, but there's one particular teepee that they didn't touch. That one would move around by itself without anybody touching it. One day, it'll be in the corner, and the next day, it'll be in the center. There were more incidents that happened in that house, but we were young and stubborn. It never really bothered us. I guess we were more of a nuisance to them than they were to us. Back around 1999, we had a chance to get away from the Hmong apartments and rented our own house. We knew the kids who used to live there, and their older brothers were gangbangers. Being our first house, we were very excited, especially because it had an upstairs. We weren't scared of the upstairs when we first moved in there, and we were already picking rooms upstairs. Holy crap, so many upstairs. Nobody even went upstairs because it felt very spooky and dark. Take a shot every time someone says upstairs. At night, my sisters would always hear something running up the stairs, which is separated by a wall. I mean, they always heard it at night, but assumed that it was my dad locking the upstairs door at night. My sisters hear it every single night, but my parents didn't believe in them until one particular night. Take a shot every time someone says night. Both of them were up late in the kitchen when they heard someone run up the stairs. Take a shot every time someone says stairs. Both of them freaked out and thought it was a robber, so they grabbed the flashlights and checked the upstairs in the dark. They saw nothing unusual and shrugged it off, thinking that it was a cat or something. But then they heard it again, nights later. Being unexplainable, my dad set up cans and tripwires so that whenever someone touches them, they would have to make noises. This surprisingly worked, and they made noises at night, but when we would check the next morning, everything is exactly the same, as if it has never been touched. We hadn't seen anything unusual until my cousins came for a sleepover. We were all having a great night because everyone was over. Some of us slept at my sister's room while the rest slept in the big living room. Well, during midnight, my little cousin woke up crying and panicked like hell. He woke everybody up except the ones that slept in the room. My sisters asked him what it was, and he pointed behind them, crying in fear. He then crawled under the chairs as if he was trying to get away from something. He cried out that he saw a monster. My dad comes out and did a little Hmong magic. Everyone finally calmed down, and he went to sleep with my parents. That early morning, they all decided to go home. When my cousin finally had the guts to tell us, he said that he saw a black hooded figure with red eyes. He said he woke up that night feeling dreamy, and he felt like something bad was coming. Then, to his surprise, he looked into the kitchen and saw the black figure pop out and floated towards him. That's when he started crying and tried to get away from it. When he woke up everybody, the figure was still present, but then it glided through our bedroom door. He then looked at my little sister and described her face as the Grudge. That's when he crawled under the chairs. My uncle came and did a jingle bell and suggested that we find a new house. In that house, we seemed to have little money even though we had income coming in. It also seemed like our food supply ran out so quickly. My mom also found blood on her shirt. Then she later got sick. We finally moved out after a few months, and now there's another new Hmong family living there now. This took place sometime in 2008. I had just moved into my new home and many of my things were still in boxes. It was just me and my son. We were in the bedroom unpacking our things. My son was a year old at the time, and he was sleeping on the bed. As I was unpacking our stuff, I heard a box being dropped in the living room. Being cautious, I went out to see who or what it was. One of the heavy boxes that was placed on the kitchen table had been pushed off and was lying partially open on the floor. I checked the house and all the doors and windows were locked. No windows were opened. It couldn't have been someone who snuck in and left. I have hardwood floors and usually you would hear footsteps if someone was walking around. A couple of days later, while I was in the living room and my son was watching TV, another box that was sitting on top of the shelf in our bedroom closet was pushed off. I went to check and, like before, nobody. So with a little sigh I said, "Okay, this is my house now. Leave us alone." It never happened again. Another time, my cousin was visiting. He spent the night on the living room sofa instead of the guest room because he wanted to watch the TV. The next day, while we were having breakfast, he swore that last night someone was whispering or blowing wind into his ears. He got scared and, without opening his eyes, he pulled the covers over his head quickly. Whatever it was, he felt like it was standing or kneeling right next to him, breathing on him, right through the blanket. This happened back in Laos in the old days, like around my grandparents' generation. My mom had an uncle who did a blood oath thing with a girlfriend. Unfortunately, they both married someone else. A couple years later, the girlfriend died during childbirth and came back to take the uncle with her because of the blood oath that they both took. My uncle got really sick for a long time. My grandma said that she was only a young girl during that time, but she helped my uncle's wife take care of her for a while before he passed away. My grandma said that as night approaches, the uncle would open his eyes and kind of look towards the doorway and whispers, "Oh, you guys are here? Come sit inside." And then he'd say things like, "Oh, I'm so tired, I can't go with you now. Wait again until I gain more strength." My grandma said that during those nights, the uncle would carry on a conversation with someone or something as though they were sitting right beside his bed. She said that she hated being in that room at night because it was as though someone was in there watching her. As soon as someone entered that room, they'd all start getting chills and goosebumps. So rarely was anyone else there besides her and the aunt. The uncle was sick for quite a while, and then he finally passed away. My grandma said that at the time when he passed away, it was as though someone was strangling him, and he kept on gasping for breath and choking. When the funeral came around, the uncle was already all rotten and stank so badly that nobody wanted to go near his corpse. After the funeral, a long-distance aunt who was a shaman, told the wife and the family that his dead girlfriend and several other Bansong visited him while he was dying. They were the ones who he talked to while he was very ill.